Hey, welcome back to another episode of Franly Advice. Thank y'all for continuing to listen and really show up. And I realize you want the real Fran energy. You don't really want the corporate buttoned up hi, my name is Fran energy. You want the energy of Fran, who is a little sassafras, but also hilarious. So today we are talking about what it looks like to transition from just being a general done for you service provider into an agency owner and how to shift that narrative overall in your business. And we're going to talk about some things that I usually am just a hater of, and that's mindset work. Honestly, okay, let me give you a little backstory. When I first started running my business in 2018, back then the woo girls really got on my nerves. Well, number one, I'm a Christian, so sometimes I would be I don't understand what you're doing or whatever. And number two, some people would be so much mindset work that I would be when does the strategy start? When do we actually learn how to run the business? Can you tell me something other than I need to want it or I have imposter syndrome? Let's get past all that. Let's get into the real deal, how I'm gonna start this shit. So what I noticed as I started to grow in my business, I needed strategy plus mindset work. And some of that stuff comes from therapy. A lot of it comes from learning from coaches of the things I can do to kind of trick my brain into really enjoying what I'm doing and the things I can do to actually feel safe as a CEO. One of the really best things, I'm never going to stop talking about emancipation if you're wondering. One of the best things DL did during the 2-day event of emancipation was she talked about how to create financial safety as a CEO. And I was sitting on the front row that day. The first day I wasn't. The second day I just sat on the front row. Not for any particular reason. No, it is for a reason. Drisha Hawk was speaking. But I didn't think anything else would really grab me that day. I got to stop being a skeptic. But she starts talking about financial safety and how to create financial safety as a business owner. And I just choked up a little bit, but I thought nobody could hear me. I just made a little sound you know how if you're trying to stop yourself from crying or if you're calming down from crying, that's what happened to me. And she was like, what came up? And I was like, oh no, not again. So 2 days of me being called out was wonderful. But anyway, so she calls me out and she asked me what came up, and I'll talk about what came up a little later in the episode. But this is what we're going over today. You know, I like to hit you with the quick and dirty download of what's happening so you can skip forward if you want to, or you can listen to the entire episode. It's totally up to you. All right. So the first step is start with the clients you already have. Most VAs overlook this, and we'll talk about how to do it and how I did it. This episode also shares what to do before you fire everybody. Yeah, I thought I was going to fire all my clients and start an agency from scratch, but really I just needed to make a few tweaks here and there. And then we're going to talk about some of my background, what it felt like to shift from being an OBM and a VA into becoming a podcast agency instead of just Fran being your go-to girl. Okay, so what's the first move? We cannot close our doors too early. I see this happen too often. People will come to me and ask for help on their agencies, and they'll be like, yeah, I was a virtual assistant and I did so well there. I was easily getting clients and I don't know why I can't do it as an agency owner. Maybe offering 1 or 2 services is too specific. No. What happened when you started is usually what I get to. And for me, what happened when I started, I almost did this, but thank the Lord I didn't. I almost fired every single client I had that did not involve a podcast, and I was just going to be done with them and be okay, that's in the past. Let's find us just some podcast clients. But what I really needed to do instead, which I don't know why I did this. It must have been God, because at that time, I didn't have a mentor anymore. I wasn't in a program. There was no one to ask this question. So it had to be a moment of pure, God meeting me where I was and with the knowledge I had. So this is how I reposition myself and how I teach people to do it. Email all of your clients and explain the transition, and not in the way of I'm shutting down my virtual assistant business. Thank you so much for being a great customer. I hope to see you around the internet. No, we want to email all of your clients and tell them, hey, I just decided I am really good at this part of my virtual assistant work. I'm really good at editing podcasts and managing them. And I think this is really my thing now. I would love to keep you on board if that is something you're interested in. If not, I'm so happy to help you find another virtual assistant to take on the task that I've been doing. It's been so great working with you. I would hate to lose this connection, but I'm still rooting from you from afar. That was all I would say. Like, instead of just telling them like the last day is this day and I'm going to be doing something else, but you guys keep an eye out on the internet to see what I'm doing. That's giving them room to like forget about who you are and to just like move on. When you tell them you've decided to specialize and you're moving into an agency model and you explain what that agency is, what you'll be doing, and they're like, well, I already love you doing X. Why would I give you up? You want to give them the option to like really move forward with you and your business. So here's a quick story time about how it happened to me. So I sent out that cute email that I just said. It could have been different words. I don't quite remember, but I'm sure it was like similar to what I just expressed to you. So at the time I had 7 virtual assistant clients and about 2 OBM clients. And I was just like at mad capacity. I had like the secret VA on the side who like was just doing like some social media management stuff for some of my clients. And I was doing most of the heavy lifting for all the rest of my clients. So I'm like overworked, overwhelmed, and just like about to give it up. So I decide to like just tell all of them like, hey, I'm shifting to only managing podcasts. And the ones who had a podcast, I would be like, hey, who's doing your podcast right now? I'm currently shifting to only doing podcast work. I'll no longer be offering virtual assistant services, but I would love to continue working with you in this capacity on podcasts instead of whatever it was I was also helping them with. So out of those clients, only 2 of them said, no, thanks, I'm okay. But the really cool one was the OBM client that was stressing me out. Like the reason I cried at night over my business. Like I just sometimes, as someone who did not know I had ADHD, I didn't know why it was happening to me. Like sometimes I would feel like I was just always one step behind what she needed. And I couldn't figure out how to catch up with her to organize her business in a way that would be successful for both of us. She was the first person to get the email. I didn't know she was managing her own podcast by herself. And she was like, actually, I've been looking for a podcast manager. Do you want to switch to that and just train my new OBM for the next month? And then you can offboard and just do my podcast. And it created a much better relationship for us. It helped us not to leave on bitter terms whenever I decided to like finally sell off my business for parts. We didn't leave on bitter terms. She was like excited for me because we were both in like similar stages of life, of having babies. Just I had just got married like a year or 2 ago at that time. So it mended a lot of our relationship that was becoming very stressed and tense by me letting her know like I wanted to do a different service. And she just said like, I love working with you in any capacity that I can. That would be amazing. So it really like mended that relationship, but I would have lost out on a potential client and potential money if I would have just told her I'm closing down the OBM part of my business or the done for you part of my business that does not involve podcasting. The fact that I took the time to let her know what I was transitioning to and open the door to allowing her to still be a client, but just in a new way, was one of the smartest moves I ever made. I sent her over a new contract immediately. She signed it right away and we just moved forward. And we decided like it was like one of the best options. Like we both got on a call and like, do you feel better like together, like working together? And we were both like, yeah, I feel so much better. And the OBM she got had more capacity to actually like potentially come on as her full-time employee. And I didn't have a desire to become her full-time employee. And I think that was part of like our headbutting. She wanted me to operate as if I didn't have any other clients but her. But when I edited her podcast, it was fine. We were fine. We were cool because she only had the one expectation of me, and that was to show up to edit her podcast once a week, and it went swimmingly. Okay, so after you let all your clients know, like don't just let them go. Let them know what you're doing next and leave the door open, as Bruno Mars would say. Leave the door open in case they want to step right into your new business model and just say like, I'm going wherever Fran goes. because some people like that. Okay, so clarify what you want to offer next. Write down every single task you've ever done for all your clients, even the ones you hate. Write down the ones you really love. Write down the ones that you feel like, is this really something worth noting? Yes, everything is worth noting. So write them all down. Anything you've done for any client and you've gotten paid for it, write that shit down. And let's really think through what's on this list. After you have your list all compiled, now you want to narrow it down to your top 3 favorite things. And I say 3 because an agency model really doesn't work when we're just offering any and everything and all of the services we could ever dream of, or all the talents we have in general. We want to narrow it down to 3 because, and I'll talk about this more as we keep going, but the only way to run an agency very well is just to have repeatable processes that feel like stupid sometimes. They feel like so easy. They feel like they become second nature to everyone who works with you, of your process and how you run each week, because you make it that easy and it becomes so simple because you only have 3 things you're offering at max. I really prefer you to have 1 to 2, but narrow it down to your favorite 3 things. Think, what's your zone of genius? What's scalable? And then what do clients compliment you on the most? Ask yourself these questions. The one thing that I had the hardest time figuring out, if it was scalable, the one part I had the hardest time with is because I had so many other offers going on and they weren't, let's be real, they don't really be offers as virtual assistants. It's just somebody asked you if you could do something on a sales call and you said, actually, yeah, I know how to do that. I do it in my own business. And then they're like, can you do it for mine? And you say, yeah, sure, why not? And all those years, sure, why not, add up. And you create this space of chaos, but becomes super cloudy for you to understand if anything you know how to do is scalable. Can you teach people how to do what you do? It cannot be something that is really good because you did it and people are like, oh, Fran does blah, blah, blah so well, but it's not something you can teach anyone. It's just things that just come off the top of your brain. I right now probably couldn't hire someone else to coach under me because my framework exists, but my framework in Excel, the strategies, some of it just comes from me having ADHD and looking at people's businesses and agencies and being like, oh, I found the problem. It was this gap right here. And I'm not sure why my brain identified it. I know it shouldn't be there, but I haven't come up with a complete formula of what could happen and how other people could explain it to someone. So it's just me right now doing one-on-one coaching. And think about it like that. If it's something that's so specific that only you can do, it's not scalable, mark that shit out. But we need to make sure we know you can actually do this. It's your zone of genius, but also it's scalable. It's not specific to just you. You could pass this off to anyone. And that what you do, actually, people in the market want it and clients compliment you for it. These 3 things need to be yes, 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 in order to decide if these are the skills you want to use to grow an agency. So let me tell you about a time I tried to grow an agency from just the brain of Fran and why you don't want to do it. I played around with the idea of owning an agency for maybe 6 months before it finally worked out. So the first time I thought about it, I think I've told this story before, but I was hanging out with my friend Tiana and Tatiana at the time, and I was telling them yeah, I want to offer a whole scale of marketing services. I want to be your one-stop shop for marketing. And mind you, the things I did well, but I didn't know why I was doing them well. I just had the time and the patience with myself to get them done. So I was like, okay, so we're going to do their podcast because that's a no-brainer for me. So easy. We're going to do their social media. And I was like, but I'm going to maybe really need to hire somebody for social media because I don't like it. And this is true. I don't like managing other people's social media. And then I was like, and we're going to do blogs and we're going to do their entire launch cycles from start to finish. I got a program where it teaches you how to launch courses, how to launch programs, how to launch any marketing offer ever. And I learned it and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go out here and just offer all these services. I tried it with one client and failed miserably. Literally week 2, I was like, whoa, this is so much. And I was depending on someone else to do some of the system stuff because I didn't know Kajabi at the time, but the clients that I had, they were all on Kajabi, and the one who wanted to test this out with me was using Kajabi. And the girl on my team who was supposed to be managing anything that was in Kajabi just disappeared for like 2 weeks straight. I thought the girl had gone on to glory. Turns out she just like, I don't know, she lost access to internet and just couldn't like get in touch with me. And I was like, oh, that's pretty scary. But it was also scary because I didn't have that skill. And I was trying to run this like lean, clean machine with me and 3 other girls running a marketing agency. This was before I found my OBM. And it was like a crash and burn. It was the first time that 2 clients at once fired me. It didn't happen again, but it felt very personal when those clients fired me. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing wrong? Like, this is everything anyone could ever want. And then I was like, oh, we just suck at this. Like, we're terrible. Like, we're barely getting people to the finish line. I'm like not even tracking their numbers. I'm just trying to make sure they get something done. And I was like, we should not be in this business. But once again, the shining light was their podcasts were killing it. Their podcasts were growing. The strategies I had set up for them were doing very well. So I was like, okay, let's stop the nonsense of this marketing agency that I think I'm trying to start. It lasted for all of 2 seconds, that marketing agency. And let's just, go back over there to that podcast thing and see what it's talking about. And I like started getting more podcast clients outside of like regular general virtual assistant clients, and then went back to number 1 of what I told y'all. I didn't just like I didn't like fire all my clients. I just offered what my new offer was to them. But when you try to do too much in an agency model, especially an online business that's smaller, and typically like you as a CEO, you're still pretty involved in your business at this point. You have to be, otherwise it won't be profitable. We'll get to profits, but you're still pretty heavily involved. You know a lot of the clients personally at this point. You probably are still sales at this point. So you want to make sure it is a simple process, but it is your zone of genius. You as the leader, this needs to be your zone of genius because this business is your baby. It needs to be scalable, and you need to know, do your clients want it? Does the market want it? You got to know all those things. Learn from Fran's hard-learned lessons and some of my clients. Finally, when it comes to like deciding on what to offer, this is kind of like the formula I use. What you enjoy, what you're great at, and then what is the market craving? So this is going to be your agency niche. When you figure out that formula, you really nail down like the secret sauce. And I'll link below a really good document I put together, and I love it. I personally love it because I put it together, but it'll walk you through how to choose a niche when it comes to becoming an agency owner. And I'll link it below for you guys to grab for free. But you don't need to be all the things to all the people in order to grow an agency. You just need to do 1 or 2 things really damn good and be known for it to start out your agency. All right, and this is the part that I told y'all I avoid like the plague, and still to this day I'm still constantly like avoiding it. But luckily I've been working with DL since emancipation and her team on like mindset work that feels more like strategy for me, which is like ultimately a win because like I can actually work through it in a more appropriate way. But anywho, the mindset shifts that it takes to go from being a done-for-you service provider into a CEO are some of the hardest work I've done as a business owner. And the biggest thing I realized, and it like nearly like broke me, was I traded benefits at a corporate job to become a contractor who's low-key still an employee. And some people are fine with this because like they leave a 9-to-5 just for the flexibility, and virtual assistant work offers that, but it still offers some level of protection because it's still on the business owner to like go out and grow their business so they can afford to have you, to like market themselves and all this other thing. And it's not really like on you at that point. But when you decide to run an agency, you will come into contact with this in your brain and you will be like, damn, I thought I was being a boss the whole time. Which, I mean, I'm not saying virtual assistants aren't bosses, but there's a level of the work that happens for a virtual assistant that still is reminiscent of like an employee mindset. And you have to shift out of that. So one of the biggest things that I will continue to harp on is like switching over from that feeling of like, this is when I notice the feeling, but the feeling of like being the help into like the strategic leader requires so much mindset work, so much like reassuring yourself that you create the safety that you need financially, reassuring yourself that you are that girl, which I usually tell myself at least once a day because I don't quite believe it. So I'm often having to tell myself, you are that girl. And this comes from like years and years and years of being like such good servants to other people. And you can still get some of the ideology and thought process of what comes into play of you as the agency owner versus the done for you service provider. For me, one of them was like finding the word servant leader. And I was like, okay, let me be a little more curious about what a servant leader is. And a servant leader is exactly what it sounds like. A person who leads with others in mind first. And the decisions aren't all about like, well, what I want to do, where my company is going. It's more so like, okay, I have these 3 virtual assistants who are so good at X. I want to know how I can make sure as my business grows, they grow with me. I want to know how I can support them in their business ideas. Like being curious about how your team feels about working with you instead of just like pushing out tasks will help you so much if you have a hard time shifting from being the help to being like the strategic CEO and leader. And the other thing that happens with your employee versus business owner mindset is really like how you talk to your clients. It's mind boggling how different the conversation started to go for me from being like the general virtual assistant to them like talking to another business owner, because I stopped like just taking on any task they assigned to me and being like, here, can you do this? Can you get this done by tomorrow? Can you get that? And there's a time and a place for this. This isn't like a shade or like anything to say like, oh, it's so bad to be a virtual assistant or an employee. No, it's for those of us who like started a virtual assistant business to be a business owner who slowly realized, no, I have worked myself into a job with no benefits, right? You want to really start to focus in on how you communicate with your clients and how you hold boundaries with your clients, how you show up in the marketplace to make sure people understand there's a different layer of access to you now, not because you're untouchable, but because you now run a whole machine of an agency and you cannot be as readily available as you used to be as a general virtual assistant. And you have to work on the mindset of knowing that that's okay. You're safe. You are doing a good job. You are doing this to serve your clients and it's nothing wrong. So you have to reframe yourself from thinking, and this is going to be so immediate. When you start to think like, oh, I'm doing business to business now, I'm going to lose clients. Stop thinking like that. Think, I don't need my clients. And that, again, is going to be hard for the servant heart to say, I don't need my client. As a servant, especially if you're like an Enneagram 2, you're probably like, oh my God, but I serve others. That's what I was called to do, was to serve others. You can still be a servant leader and reframe that I need my clients into, I choose to work with them because I love it, because I'm passionate about it. It's not a necessity. It's a desire. When you change it to like, I desire working with these types of clients and building this agency in this manner, you take away the power from your clients that you have given them the power of like, they hold the purse, they hold all the money. I need to bend to their will and make sure I show up for them as frantic as they are. I'm going to come back and be their calm and I'm going to do all this, this, and that. You got to let that part of you go and embrace the part of you that says, I love working with them. I know it can be hard, but I enjoy and I'm passionate about solving their problems, but they're not my everything. They're not my everything. They don't determine how much I make because I still have the power to go out and find other clients to help me determine how much I make. You see like that subtle transition from like feeling like, oh my God, I can't do this without my clients, to like, I love my clients. I choose my clients. Okay. And that's one of those really weird mindset things where you're just like, that's not gonna work, Fran. But you start doing it, you'd be like, huh, she was onto something. I was thinking like that. And I am like, as I said, I am the biggest like mindset hater, but it really does help. The other mindset shift that I had to like really go through was something called a fear inventory. And if you've never heard of it, my first coach told me about it. I'm not the originator of this slide, but if you've ever heard of a fear inventory, it's basically how you get curious about like your fears on a deeper level versus just the surface level of them. And if you just listen to my podcast and you're like, I'm not trying to own an agency, Fran, this is actually still helpful for you. So with a fear inventory, what you want to do is get that initial fear out of your head. So I remember Sarah just gave me this blank Google Doc and it had like numbers 1 through 20 and was like, just start with number 1. Like, what's the thing you fear? And I said, I fear losing all my clients. And then she just said, why? And then after that, I was like, well, if I lose all my clients, then my business won't make any money. And then she said, why? Because if my business doesn't make any money, then I might run into an issue with food. She says, why? And I say, because it's up to me to make sure I feed me and my husband. It was just me and him at the time. And she said, why? And she said, because sometimes somebody, like my parents weren't able to feed me, and I want to make sure I can always feed myself and those around me. And it got right back to the inner child issues I always have, which is a struggle with financial insecurity. So my initial like fear was rooted mostly in my concerns for who the little girl in me is and how afraid she is of going without food, without shelter, and knowing like how hard we've worked to get somewhere and all of it being taken away from me and going back to ground zero is really the fear I face. And when I think about it like that as my personal fear and not as something that's actually happening to my business, I get to remove fear from my business and I get to just do business operations and be more curious about the data and what the data is telling me, and not some random ass fear of like, all my clients are going to leave me today. And it becomes more so like, okay, let's look at the data to see like how many clients we need in order to hit our goals. What do our current clients feel like? Let's survey them, being more curious about my business in that way and not fearful that my business was going to take away everything in my life. And then it just really helped me to constantly ask myself why, to realize like none of that shit I talk about business wise and fears actually is the problem. The problem always will be, and there's nothing I can do to make it go away. It's more of something I learned to live with. I learned to know when that emotion is coming up. I was talking to Ron about it. I just remember like, and I've told y'all this story. I remember being 10 years old and paying for like my parents and my sister paying for our dinner with lunch money I had saved. And it was like $20 paying for Taco Bell. So I know that little girl will show up forever for me. She will always show up as a reminder of like why I do the things I do. But I can't let the fear that little girl has control my actions in my business or even my life. So doing a fear inventory is pretty amazing, and I really wish that mindset work wasn't necessary. I wish that I could tell you like it's just all strategy. If you follow the strategies that I give you, you're going to make it. No, some of it is going to depend on how you are able to like interact with your brain's feelings and your brain's overreactions in order to actually capitalize on the strategy I give you. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck at idea phase because you haven't taken care of whatever bothers, what if it's your inner child or some kind of lack you feel in life. If you don't identify that and then go get like the help you need, very huge proponent of therapy. I'm obsessed with my therapist, but if you can't help that like basic need in you, it's going to be very hard to do any of the strategies I provide on this podcast or even if we work one-on-one together. So don't be like Fran of past and try to like hustle your way through your business. Make sure you're taking care of your most basic fears to separate them from your business. All right, let's wrap it up. Put a bow on it. So number 1, don't ghost your clients. Just reshape your role. Number 2, choose a niche that's aligned, profitable, and rooted in your strengths. Number 3, start doing the mindset work now so that you can lead with confidence as you start to develop your agency. All right, what I want you to do today, which is going to be like so crazy that I'm assigning y'all mindset work. I want you to actually do your fear inventory. If you're a done for you service provider and you're just kind of like, I want to grow. I want to get past this ceiling. Like, let's all be real. There's usually like a ceiling of between like 5 to like 8K months if you're doing like general done for you services and you haven't like started to do like a high ticket offer, because maybe whatever you do is not something that people offer as high ticket. Because podcast management, honestly, like I didn't see the benefit of doing it as like super high ticket because people can do it at such an affordable rate. But if you're like capped out like I was, making between like 5 and 8K every month, do a fear inventory and ask yourself, get curious as to why you don't want to scale into an agency and why you maybe don't want to do this work. And write down like a list of tasks that you love right after you do that fear inventory. Start to get really curious with your brain about like how you could maybe use the gifts you already possess to start an agency today. All right. If you are like, okay, this is heavy work, I want to do it with somebody, you can do it with me right now. Right now, I'm still offering one-on-one coaching for 3 months at a time at $9.97 for 3 months. You heard me right, or $350 a month. So what we'll do over that period of 3 months is really like focus in on how to get you to the point of building an agency from scratch. You don't have to have anything figured out. You could just only have one client for all I care. We'll get you to the point where you start to position yourself as an agency owner and not just a done for you service provider. And if you don't, go subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, shout out to you, but go subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're on YouTube, head on over to Spotify, follow my podcast over there as well. But love y'all. See y'all next week. Peace.